The winter break is officially over. We have finally made it to race week. Formula One cars are back on track. We're starting the season back at the Australian Grand Prix. So that means we have got to make our predictions. Welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast, where we are indeed predicting the Australian Grand Prix. Brandon, how you feeling?
I'm pumped. I can't believe that race week is already upon us. It feels just like yesterday we were talking about if Lando Norris was going to win the 2024 driver's title. That did not happen, but I'm excited to see what he can do this year and what everybody can do this year. It's officially Formula One season.
Yeah, now it's time to ask, can Lando Norris win the 2025 title? Title back on? Are we on? So we've got a lot to talk about this weekend. Let's start it off. As always, we start off with our podium pusher of the weekend. For those of you who are new, we've gained a lot of subscribers recently. That is just someone we think is going to have a good weekend, a weekend better than they normally have. It doesn't have to necessarily be best weekend to win podium pusher of the weekend to get that point right. Just someone who we think is going to have an amazing weekend. So for my podium pusher of the weekend, first one of the year, I've gone with Williams. I'm throwing out a team for the first time, feeling bold, have to defend my title from getting the most predictions right last year. So I'm putting a team out there. I'm buying into the Williams hype. I think that they are truly going to live up to at least some of the pace they showed over testing. I think Australia is a track that should suit their car well. I like their driver lineup, Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. I think they should have a great weekend here as well. So I'm buying into the hype a little bit. I'm gonna add some cars to the hype train. I'm picking Williams as my first podium pusher of the season.
I think that's a great pick. I mean, you have to remember that Carlos Sainz won here last year, so he is still the reigning Australian Grand Prix winner up until this period of time. Who knows? Maybe he'll make it two in a row. That would be crazy. I've gone with Lando Norris. I think Lando's test was pretty fantastic, especially in the race pace. The long run pace looked great on that McLaren. He seemed to have a great handle on the car. And I think that he's going to have a great weekend. So start the season off right.
I would call that the safe pick, but we truly have no idea what is going to happen. I mean, McLaren didn't even show their full strength over testing, and so we're kind of just giving them the benefit of the doubt and assuming that they have the best car. So I would call it the safe pick, but no pick is really safe going into the first weekend of the season, especially this season. Back marker of the weekend. This is someone who we believe is going to have a poor weekend. Doesn't have to be the poorest, just not great in general. Unfortunately, I'm going with Jack Doohan as my back marker of the season, or back marker of the weekend. We've been making too many offseason predictions. I got to lock in for this puppy. Back marker of the weekend, Jack Doohan. It is his home race. Unfortunately, I do not think he's going to have a great home race. We already know Franco Colapinto is going to be there as the reserve driver. I think there's just going to be loads of pressure on Jack Doohan. I think he finishes way off the pace of Pierre Gasly on Saturday and Sunday. I think he has a poor first weekend of the 2025 season.
What do we think that Franco's in the car by FP2? What are the chances of that?
Probably not, but I think they're going to do that thing where like Jack Doohan puts one wheel in the gravel and immediately the camera shot just pans to Franco Colapinto in the garage and like zooms in on his face slowly. They're going to do that as much as possible to start the season off this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what they did with Liam Lawson, Daniel Ricciardo last year, as well as Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo when Daniel was still just a reserve driver. So the cameramen love doing that to us. I have gone with Ollie Behrman for my back marker of the weekend. I really like Ollie. I think he's going to have a good season, but I don't know that he's going to start off the season very well. Haas, after testing, looks to be maybe a slight step behind where they ended the year last year. And Australia is a pretty technical and challenging track. Not that Ollie can't handle that, but I'm just not expecting the car and the drivers to be on the pace this weekend.
Yeah, I honestly kind of feel like it's a bit of the same scenario with Ollie Behrman. Like he is coming in with a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He's been hyped up a fair bit this offseason. And yes, he's got 3 races under his belt, but he's still a rookie. This is his first full year. He's never raced at Australia, and it is a very unique circuit, like you said. So he does come into the year with a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Haas don't look great, so I'm sure it will take some time for him to get up to speed, like you said. This is where it gets easier. Maybe poll predictions. I have gone with Charles Leclerc, as I did all year in 2024. I felt like I just threw out Charles Leclerc poll predictions every single weekend, and like none of them were right. So I'm starting out 2025 the same way. I think Charles Leclerc will take pole at the Australian Grand Prix Ferrari isn't that far off from McLaren. I think Charles Leclerc is the best qualifier on the grid. So you put those things together, Charles Leclerc's taking pole.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also am predicting Charles to get pole. Ferrari has always, I mean, the last like 4 or 5 years, they've always been a great qualifying team, but maybe not a great race pace or race strategy team. And I think the car is, at this point in the season, starting off at the best point it has in a long time. And with Charles and Lewis both on the team, I mean, that's one of the best driver lineups on the grid, if not the best driver lineup on the grid. There's we can never count them out for pole. We can never count them out for a race win, to be honest. So I'm going with Charles as well.
Yeah, I'm glad we agree for our first pole prediction. So we're either both getting it right or we're both getting it wrong. P3, I have gone for Max Verstappen. He said it himself that he doesn't think Red Bull will be competing for the pole or win this weekend, but I can't count out Max Verstappen. He is a four-time world champion going for his fifth title this year. And even though that Red Bull does look to be a little bit slower than the top two teams, probably the third or fourth fastest car, Max Verstappen is the best driver on the grid right now, so it feels wrong to leave him off the podium for my first podium of the year. So I'm gonna slide Max Verstappen into P3.
Yeah, that's a great pick. Max Verstappen on the podium is always a great pick. I've gone with Charles in P3. I think that race pace of the Ferrari is just not quite up to speed with the McLaren. So I think Charles will get pulled, but I don't expect him to necessarily win the race.
I don't expect him to win the race either. I've given him P2, though. I think Charles Leclerc will take second at the Australian Grand Prix. I agree with you. I think that the pace gap between the Ferrari and the McLaren will probably be more prominent during the Grand Prix, if you will. So I think Charles Leclerc, he probably might lead a little bit from the lights out, but I do think he will lose the lead at some point, take home that P2 finish.
Yeah, I've gone with a an Australian in P2, not Jack Doohan. I've gone with Oscar Piastri. I think the race pace in McLaren is, like we just said, fantastic, and I think Oscar's gonna be fueled by the home crowd. He did pretty well here last year, but I think he's gonna do even better this year. I'm going with P2.
Yeah, let me get Oscar Piastri on the home podium. I would love to see that. I feel like Australians have never had the best of luck at their home race. I feel like the last time an Australian was on the podium was 2014, and then Daniel Ricciardo got disqualified. So hopefully Oscar Piastri gets to keep that P2 if he does end up there. In first place, I have gone with Lando Norris. This does feel like the safe prediction. I got to be honest with you. We're just assuming that McLaren has the fastest race pace, and that is what they showed on day two in Bahrain, but there's still more to come. We are giving them a little bit benefit of the doubt. But Australia is such a unique track. There's no way to really know. But based on how we ended last year, kind of the signs we saw in testing, I'm going to put Lando Norris in P1, and I feel fairly confident about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Lando, like you said, had a great second day in Bahrain. And I think that he is feeling pretty confident going into the season, more confident than maybe other drivers are in their cars. And so I've also gone with Lando in P1. I think that he's going to start the season off right, open up his first ever lead in a Drivers' World Championship.
That would be
That'd be
insane. This
crazy.
would be the first time in a long time that someone else would be leading the Drivers' Championship other than Max Verstappen, should he not win the Australian Grand Prix. So that's kind of the first time since like 2022, right? Did Max lead all the way through 23 and 24?
I think so, yeah.
That's
Maybe since the end of 2021.
that's no, because Charles Leclerc was leading at the beginning of
Oh,
2022.
that's right. Yeah, that's
So
right. That's right.
yeah, but at least for like 2 years it's been since someone else. So that would be crazy if that's how we start off this year. Speaking of crazy, our one push and prediction, my first push and prediction for the 2025 Formula One season is that none of the rookies outqualify their teammates on debut. We've got 5 rookies on the grid this year, even though 3 of them have made their Formula One debuts already. I don't see any of them outqualifying their more experienced teammates. If one was going to do it, I would give it to Gabriel Bortoleto because that Sauber is like horrible. So one of them qualifies P18, the other one qualifies P20. give or take a tenth when you're 2 seconds off the lead. I don't know. So that's who I would pick if someone was going to. But first race of the year, difficult track. I'm gonna say none of the rookies out qualify their teammates.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick. My one pushing prediction is also about qualifying. I think that we're going to have 7 different teams represented in Q3, which, as I am reading that right now out loud, does sound more bold than
That's
when I
pretty
was
insane.
typing it up. But I mean, the field is converging, and it's probably as close as it's going to get before the regulations change. As teams develop throughout the season, you know, I mean, the gaps might get bigger. Right now, we're just beginning of the season. There's not a lot of distance between the teams. Australia is a difficult track, like we have said. We've seen crashes there before in qualifying, in the race. Crazy things can happen in Australia. So I'm going all in on it.
So that means at least one of the top team drivers has to be eliminated in Q1 or Q2. Right now on the spot, who would it be?
Oh, geez. I don't know.
You back
Um,
yourself into this corner. You got to pick.
I did. I mean, I would have to say it could be either. We're saying either of the drivers from one of the
Yeah,
top.
it's got to be one. You if you want to get 7 teams, you need at least 3 extra spots. So
Yeah,
one
yeah,
or more top team drivers are gonna have to not make it.
yeah. I think from Red Bull would be Liam Lawson. Mercedes probably. I don't know. That's a tough one. I feel like both Mercedes might make it in. Um,
So you're
I
saying
don't know.
Liam Lawson would be the driver that gets knocked out in Q2 to make room for that 7th team to
Yeah,
get in?
probably. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's who it would have to be too. I could not imagine the toxicity we get on social media if Liam Lawson qualifies just the Sergio Perez fans are going to be resurrected from the dead to just dog on that guy if that's what happens.
no, they're just waiting for Sergio for Liam to do horribly, and then Sergio to come back with Cadillac.
Absolutely insane scenes if that happens. We've got some pusher predictions from the fans. At PVK underscore 96 underscore says Max Verstappen wins. At Aussie Speedster says double McLaren podium incoming. And at David underscore 9162 says Yuki Tsunoda out qualifies Liam Lawson.
That would be crazy. I could see it happening though. I could see it happening.
Yeah, well, that Racing Bulls doesn't look like the greatest car at the moment, but if that happens, I just can't imagine the scenes if that's how we start off the year. As always, if you want your predictions or questions to be featured on our podcast in future episodes, be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe so you can leave future predictions for future race weekends. That is it for our predictions for the Australian Grand Prix. Before we get out of here, Brandon, what are your party podium thoughts?
I'm just excited for race weekend. It's the first time in a long time where we've had a race weekend, and for us here in the United States, it starts very late on Thursday night, which is awesome. We get to experience the Australian Grand Prix a little bit earlier than the rest of the world, maybe not actually, but kind of. So I'm pumped about it. I just can't wait to watch cars on track and figure out, all right, where is the pecking order actually lining up. So I'm just excited.
Yeah, it's that time of the year where I get to decide if I want to mess up my sleep schedule for 4 weeks in a row to watch 19 drivers and Lance Stroll drive around in circles all weekend. So we'll
Uh,
have to see. Sorry, Lance Stroll. I didn't mean to throw some Lance Stroll shade in there. It's the first episode of the year, so I had to toss them in there. But that is all we've got for this episode of the Podium Pushers podcast. As always, thank you for watching or listening. Before you go, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, find us on social media, do all the things. We are so thankful for each and every one of you who decide to let us talk to you about Formula One each and every week. We will see you to recap the Australian Grand Prix once it's all done. Until then, have a great day and God bless.
See ya.